in this video, we're going to start talking about disjunctions or statements, of which there are two kinds, inclusive and exclusive. Also, what I'm going to do in this video after introducing the concept of disjunctions is I'm going to go over a couple of the rules that we can use with disjunctions, addition, and also constructive dilemma. Let's get into it. Now we're talking about disjunctions. What are disjunctions or statements? And the thing is, there's two kinds of or statements. So we're going to have two symbols here. We have inclusive disjunctions, and the symbol for that is the wedge. It looks like a V. And so if I say something like A wedge B, what this means is it's A or B, but it could be both. Then there are exclusive disjunctions. Now the symbol for that, I call it the sniper sight. Looks like a circle, a cross in the middle, plus sign. This is the symbol for an exclusive disjunction. So if I say this, A, and the way we sometimes say this one is or. The way this one's sometimes said is XOR, meaning it's an exclusive or. And so if I said A, XOR B, that's really the same thing as saying, yeah, you could have one or the other, but you definitely can't have both. Some examples of inclusive and exclusive disjunctions. So I could say something like, with dinner, you could have the soup, or you could have the Caesar salad. So this could be inclusive, even if it says you have to pick one. What would this look like? S wedge C. You could have the soup, or you could have the Caesar salad. But you could say, hey, excuse me, I want the soup and the salad. So even though we can pick one, it's within the realm of reason that we could say that, yeah, you get one or the other, but you could have both. So this would be an example of an inclusive disjunction. Exclusive disjunctions are ones where it can't be both. It's got to be one or the other. So let's say we're looking at a shape. I see a shape, and I say, let's say we had a Monday-Wednesday class. Either today is Monday, or is Wednesday. That looks like an exclusive disjunction, but I want to go ahead and say on this next quiz with disjunctions, when I want to indicate an XOR, when it's exclusive, I'm always going to say something like this, but not both. This has 3 bits of connective language. It has an either letting us know that a disjunction is coming up. It has the or here, but then it's got this but not both language. That means this is an XOR. So XORs will always be clear. It'll say not all of the above or something like that, but not both. When you see that language, it lets you know that it's an exclusive disjunction. It's an XOR. If you don't see that language, like if I said here, either you can have the soup or the Caesar salad, but not both. You can't have both. Then that would make this an XOR. But as it is, it's an inclusive disjunction. I really think it makes sense. It's also in the realm of possibility. No, you have to pick one. No, I want both. Like, it's not impossible for both to happen, right? Even if it's inconvenient. But this one, there's no way it can be both Monday and Wednesday. Sometimes, because of time zones, it can be Monday and Tuesday on different parts of the planet at the same time, or Tuesday and Wednesday, but there's no instance where it can be Monday and Wednesday at the same time, assuming we're using the same calendar. I guess we could use a different calendar, we've got different days, that's a different matter. But the way this one would look then, it's Monday or it's Wednesday, but not both. So this XOR means you got to pick one. It's not just one or the other, maybe both, it's one or the other, period. We have a Monday-Wednesday class and you wake up and you don't know what day it is. Well, you know it's Monday or Wednesday, but not both. But you can't get out of that, what's Monday or Wednesday? Maybe it's both. That's not happening. So that's the distinction between inclusive and exclusive disjunctions, with a little bit of the lingo that indicates it. Let's take a look at a couple of translations and things that we can do with disjunctions. Let's say I said something like this. Either the ball is red or blue. We got this language, we got the language of or, we got the language of either. Now the either, in my view, is just letting you know, hey, there's a disjunction coming up. Just like the word both lets you know that there's a conjunction coming up, just like the word if lets you know that a conditional is coming up. So if I said this, either the ball is red or it's blue. The way that I would take this is it's red, wedge, B, it's red or it's blue. It could be both. How could it be both? Or maybe it's red on one side and blue on the other. If you want to get real cute, you could say it's purple. But I want to take a look at another matter. Let's take a look at this. Either the ball is red or blue or purple. Now we got more than 2 options. We got, okay, the either lets us know that an or is coming. We got an or here, and we got an or here. Now I don't see any, and there's the period, I don't see any but not both language. That's not going on. So what do I have? Red, blue, purple. So it's red, or it's blue, or it's purple. Great. Is this dyadic? Nope. So where do the parentheses go to make this dyadic? Are they going to go around the R wedge B, or are they going to go around the B wedge P? I'll say this. Disjunctions, so long as they're the same kinds of disjunctions. So if you got all the inclusive ORs, you got all XORs. It doesn't matter where you put the parentheses, just like with conjunctions. So we could put the parentheses around this. That's perfectly fine. We could also put the parentheses around this. That's equally fine. And both of these mean the exact same thing. So if it's all wedges, okay, so if it's all these, if it's all these, and if it's all these, okay, any one of these 3, you can put the parentheses wherever you want, so long as it's legitimately dyadic. Now the thing is with this one, is with conjunctions, then you can take things apart however you want. Disjunctions do not work that way. So just because you have something disjoined does not mean you can just separate it. And we'll see why that's the case in a little bit. So if you got an and statement, you can do an and out and take it apart. Now there is such a thing as a wedge out, but it doesn't just mean that you have a wedge. You can simply take it apart, like a double arrow or like an and, like a biconditional or like a conjunction. You cannot merely just separate them, because if you could, it would lead to just ridiculous things. All right, indirect proofs everywhere. So we'll take a look at what that looks like here in a minute. What I'm going to start doing is let's look at one more XOR, and then we'll take a look at some things that we can do with disjunctions like addition and constructive dilemma. Okay, let's say we had this problem. You can take History 101, Geography 101, or Religion 101, but only one of them. So first of all, there is an or here. I'll let this know, hey, this is an or. And there's a comma here, and I want to focus on this comma. So what's going on with this comma is what we've got here is a list. This, or this. And when you've got a list, what that means is, especially if there's more than two things, that means that list is being connected by this connective throughout. So just like if I said A, comma, B, and C, what that means is this is really A dot B dot C. Now, of course, we can put the parentheses here, we can put the parentheses here. So that's really what's going on if I said A, comma, B, and C. So it's the same thing with the or here. What we've really got is we've got a series of three things all connected by ors. So they're all going to be connected by the same thing. That means there's going to be two ors here because of this comma. But I also have but only one of them. So this is the same thing as saying but not both, but when you have more than two elements. So but only one of them. So you got to pick one. You can't pick two, you can't pick three, you can only pick one. So that means you actually have a series of XORs here. Now remember, the XORs, those are not the inclusive disjunctions. Those are the exclusive disjunctions. So what we've got going on here is this. You can take History 101, XOR, Geography 101, XOR, Religion 101. Now, is this dyadic? No. So what we need to do is we have two options here, because when you've got all ors, whether it be inclusive or exclusive, it doesn't matter where you put the parentheses. So this is fine, and this is fine. So this is what's going on here. Either this or this. Either one of these are fine. But we have a series of XORs. H, XOR G, XOR R. So you can take History or Geography or Religion, but only one of them. This is more than both. You can't take any but one. This is how this would be represented here. The XORs letting you know, listen, of these three options here, really what this is saying is you can only pick one. There could be reasons for that. Maybe they all meet at the same time during the semester. Maybe you can only have one of these in the requirements for your classes. In any case, that's how this would be represented. Let's now take a look at some of the things that we can do with disjunctions, some of the rules. Because some of the rules work for inclusive disjunctions, and some of the rules only work for exclusive disjunctions. The first rule that I want to take a look at is called addition, and that is also called, the shorthand for it will be wedge in. Wedge in. Now here's what this rule says. This rule says that if you have any statement that you take as a given. So let's say we've got the Earth is the third planet. How would we represent that formally? Oh, that would be just E. If you've got anything to start with, you can add anything to it with an inclusive disjunction, and it's always true. As long as the thing you're starting with is true, you can add anything to it, and the or statement will still be true. So let's say this means the Earth is the third planet from the sun. I could add on anything I want to it. Let's say F is I'm the King of France. As you may or may not be aware, I'm not the King of France. But with a wedge in, I can say this thing or anything else. Wedge in, and we say, what did we add this thing onto? We added this onto line 1. Where'd the F come from? Narnia, for all I care. With a wedge in, we don't have to say where it came from, we just have to say what we added it onto. So in this case, Earth is the third planet from the sun. That's true. But this statement here, Earth is the third planet from the sun, or I'm the King of France, is also true because of the nature of an inclusive or. One could be true or both. This one's not, but since part of it's true, that makes the disjunction work. That is, it makes the whole statement true as long as one part of it is true in terms of disjunctions. Now I could also add this onto the other side. If I started with Earth is the third planet from the sun, that was my assumption, I could add on to the other side instead. I could say I'm the King of France, or Earth is the third planet from the sun, wedge in, and that would also be onto line 1. I just say what I added it onto. It's almost like I'm stapling something tentative onto something that's real and true. And that's the way wedge in works. As long as you've got something already established, you can add anything you want on with an inclusive disjunction and the statement will still be true. Exclusive disjunctions work a little differently, but there is no such thing, let me go ahead and say it right now, as an XOR in. It does not exist. So you can't go, the Earth is the third planet from the sun, or I'm the king of France, but not both. You'd think that kind of makes sense, but no. You can never add an XOR on like that. You can add an inclusive OR on a wedge whenever you want. We'll see why that doesn't work in a little bit, because there's other rules that demonstrate why the XOR doesn't work. Well, I'll just say this. There are never rules really where you can add on an XOR. So the next rule we've got that we're going to talk about is constructive dilemma. Now, there's two forms of this. Some people even distinguish between their names, but I'm going to refer to both forms as a constructive dilemma. And this is called, for short, wedge out. Now, the way this one works, and this one's actually kind of complicated, it works this way. Whereas, say, like, arrow out, you need 2 pieces to make it work, or double arrow out, you need 1 piece to make it work, and out, you need 1 piece to make it work, but and in and double arrow in, you need 2 pieces to make it work. For wedge out, constructive dilemma, you need 3 pieces to make it work. So here's what we got. Here's the basic shape. You have an OR statement, and this could be an XOR here. It could be an inclusive OR and XOR. You have an OR statement of some kind, and then you have one of the OR parts is on the left side of the arrow, and then you have the other OR part is on the left side of the arrow. So this is one version. There's another version of this where you got an OR statement. Doesn't matter what kind of OR statement you got. But one of the OR parts is on the left side of the arrow leading to something, and then the other OR part is on the left side of the arrow leading to the same thing. So here are the differences between these two. In this case, you got, all right, this is happening or this is happening. This leads to this. This other OR part leads to this other thing. What's going on in this one is you've got an OR statement. This thing leads to this, and this other OR part leads to the exact same thing. What happens here is you get, okay, the result is C wedge D. Now you notice we could start with either kind of OR. We can only get a wedge out. This one, there's a certain sense in which you could say you get this, C or C. So if I say something like today's Wednesday or today's Wednesday, really that's the same thing as saying just today's Wednesday. So let's take a look at a couple of examples here with these. Let's say A here stands for, and the one on the left, I'm going to Boston. B stands for, I'm going to Chicago. C stands for, I'll see the Red Sox. D stands for, I'll see the White Sox. If I take these variables and plug them back in here, here's what this is saying. And I could do this either way. I could say this inclusively, I'm going to Boston or I'm going to Chicago. Maybe I'll go do both. Or I could say it exclusively, I'm going to Boston or I'm going to Chicago. I have to pick one. Doesn't matter what you do from the start. I'm going to Boston or I'm going to Chicago. And then I also have, if I'm going to Boston, I'll see the Red Sox. If I'm going to Chicago, then I'm going to see the White Sox. What do I get out of this? This right here. That means I'm going to see the Red Sox or the White Sox. Maybe both. Now you might be thinking, wait a minute. If I started with an XOR, I'm going to Boston or Chicago, how could I get only an inclusive OR as a result? I'm going to Boston or Chicago. If I go to Boston, I'm going to see the Red Sox. If I go to Chicago, I'm going to see the White Sox. Why would it be an inclusive OR? Hey, maybe the White Sox are playing the Red Sox in Boston. Maybe the White Sox are playing the Red Sox in Chicago. So it's still possible the two results could happen together. So it has to be an inclusive result, but that's what's going on there. I'm going to one or the other. If I go to one city, I'm going to see this team. If I go to the other city, I'm going to see this team. The answer is I'm going to see this one or this one. Possibly both, because I might see them play each other. That's what's going on in the version on the left. So let's take a look at an example of a version on the right. Let's say we've got A stands for I make a D, and let's say B stands for I make an F. Let's say C stands for I'll have to retake the class. So if I plug in these variables here, what that gets me is this. I make a D or an F. Now, it'd be hard for that to be inclusive. I make a D and an F. Probably exclusive. I guess there's a possibility you made a D and then it turns out, no, upon review you actually made an F. Or maybe you made an F and the grade gets later reviewed as to be a D. So that's possible. It could be inclusive. I'm going to make a D or an F. If I make a D, then I'm going to have to retake the class. If I make an F, then I'm going to have to retake the class. What does that mean? Well, in a certain sense, it means this thing. I'm going to retake the class, or I'm going to have to retake the class. But that's kind of a silly way of talking. We can just say simply, I'm going to have to retake the class. And so both of these would be an example of a wedge out. Here, you can only get an inclusive OR out. So that's the thing I want you to know. Even if you got an XOR going in, you can only get an inclusive OR going out. And here, you kind of get an inclusive OR going out, but since it's redundant, going to have to retake the class, or I'm going to have to retake the class, you can just say, I'm going to have to retake the class. That's what's going on here. All right, so that was our introduction to disjunctions. What I'm going to do in the next video is a couple of more examples of dealing with addition and constructive dilemma. Then we'll move on to some other stuff that we can do now that we've learned about conditionals and conjunctions and disjunctions. See you next time.